I'm Doji, and I am a Techlahoma volunteer. I volunteer for the OKC Design Tech, which is UX design, because if you're designing applications, you have users at the other end who need to have good UX so that they keep using your application, so that we can keep doing the things that we really love, which is coding, late night bug fixes for our bosses, I think. I think. I'm also the local leader for another design group that does UX design called the Interaction Design Foundation. You can go there and to their website, and you can get lessons on UX design in all different areas. One really cool one is actually data visualization, where they go through and they tell you what's good and bad about data visualization and how to do it. Anyway, I don't know why I started with the introduction slide. Oh, that's right. I have a bad case of CTE. It kind of messes with my judgment just a little bit. That would be why. I'm sorry. I'm just a little bit lost today. That's my talk. I know this is SQL, but I'm going to be talking about CTE today. Big things, okay? Okay, we're here to talk about CTE. That's right. What causes CTE? How to protect yourself from it, recommended treatment for CTE, because this is serious, okay? So we obviously know about this, but despite popular beliefs, software developers, DBAs, and other software professionals can also have risk of CTE, okay? Normally you don't think so, but it's true. Just trauma to the brain. Trauma to the brain, right? This is a simple table. I guess you guys can just parse that really quick. That's fine. But the realities are, this is what we usually deal with at work. A ton of them, okay? You're taking hits of CTE all the time. Crazy table exposure, okay? You don't want this. We want simple tables, things that we can understand and parse. Which means we want to use common table expressions, the other CTEs. So I've hit 3 CTEs today at the same talk. So what is CTE? It is like a pseudo-table. Who knows about CTEs? Everyone? Not everyone? Okay. Well, if you don't, I'm just going to describe them really quick. It's like a pseudo-table in a way, but it's not a temporary table. It doesn't physically exist in the database. This gets interpreted and compiled into a query plan, which would be the same as writing it out a completely different way. Once you've defined a CTE, you can query it just like you would a normal physical table. And the benefits of this is it's much easier to do this than it would be for writing nested subqueries. If it's just one nested subquery, no problem. If you're at the command line and you're messing around and you're doing something, whatever. But if this is production code, I highly recommend CTEs. So let's go ahead and take a look at the syntax and some examples. The syntax is simple and it's pretty universal across all SQL, so SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, the later versions of Oracle, Postgres. And you start out by defining your pseudo-table with the with, my pseudo-table as, and then you put your query down there. The query can be as simple as or as complex as you want it to be. And then after that, you just select it as if it were a table, as you can see from the select below. So I have a table named pseudo-table, and I'm going to select everything from my pseudo-table. I can do my joins, I can join it to other tables. And the query interpreter is going to go through, take that, decode it, and change it into a normal query. So in the end, it's a normal query, but for humans, it's easier to read. If you've read Clean Code, I talk about it a lot. I've read that book twice. The shallower you're nesting, the easier it is to read. The more you nest anything, be it code or SQL statements, the harder it is to understand when you're doing those late night bug fixes that cause the other bad type of CTE that we don't want. Here's more on CTE. You can define a bunch of tables if you like. And depending on the SQL flavor, it's slightly different. I know with Postgres, you can define a bunch of pseudo-tables and you don't have to use them. In Oracle, any pseudo-table you define, if you don't use it, it throws an error. It says you have a table defined over here, you're not using it, you need to use it. That's just a little bit of minutia, but the basics are you go ahead, you define it the first with, and then you keep saying as and naming your pseudo-tables. You delimit them with commas, and then at the end you can just join them together. So we're going to look at an example. I like hockey. There just happened to be a hockey database out there, so we're going to use hockey stuff. We're going to get the 5 highest teams for shutouts that were in round 1 of the playoffs. So we can take a look at this. It's probably not an easy query. I thought it was going to be too easy, and then I started writing it at home, and it turned out that it was perfect for CTEs. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I wrote. I don't actually have the database up and running, but this is the code that you would write to get that query. So we can go ahead and get the number of shutouts. I just make one that says shutouts in round, and then for some weird reason, if we go back to these tables, you can take a look on the playoff round table. There's team 1, which has an ID. There's team 2, which has an ID. And you're going to go ahead and you can see the number of shutouts or the round stats. So team 1 will have round stats, team 2 will have round stats, apparently, or what I could deduce from this table structure. So I have to use this playoff round as 2 different tables, and I achieve that over here by saying team 1 stats, I make it its own table, I select it by ID, and then I join it on its ID. I do the same for team stats 2 with the same ID, but it's team 2. So now I have 2 of them. I want it to be one table. Once again, I can use CTE to make another one. I just union them together. So I have one big table of all the stats, and now I can run all my filters on them. I can run my wheres, I can sum them. As I do next, I sum them so that they're grouped together by the team ID, which would be one team, and then their stats, or their shutouts. And then we end the query to answer that question with what we have over here. That's basically it. Regular SQL. So what are some use cases for this? Well, I already told you about cleaning up your code, cleaning up your SQL statements. If you have a subquery with a nesting depth greater than 1, I would highly recommend refactoring that into a CTE from the beginning. In fact, whenever I know I'm going to be using subqueries, I just start typing that now. I've been using it for a long time. It's second nature to me. And it makes things cleaner whenever you put it in code. You can read it down below. It makes sense. You can name the tables what you want them to be. And that brings me to the next one. Sometimes you might be working in an environment where there's a DBA. They might be slammed, and we want to rename tables, or maybe we can't rename tables, or everything is just messed up. In that case, you can use this to make things look very clear at the code level, and junior developers can take a look at your code and say, oh, okay, I can kind of deduce what the database means from this. If you have normalization issues, it helps with that. If your database is just plain terrible, it helps with that. So like anything, or I worked in a company that did this, you have a general purpose catch-all table, and you're running IDs against IDs on the same table. This will really help manage that.
I've had tables like that before where they were labeled one thing previously and then the developers reused them.
Reusing, yeah, we just got a comment that someone over here was in the same situation where there were tables, they had a specific purpose, and then probably because of DBA issues, availability is what I'm assuming, or the need to get things done really fast, everyone started recycling the tables and doing different things with it. In that case, this would help out just a little bit. In closing, the top one plus a developer equals brain injury, which is CTE. We don't want that. Instead, we want the bottom one, CTE, which gets you this. Any questions? Okay, thank you.